What's up, YouTube? It's Design Jedi, and I found this article I really wanted to do a video on. It's from Forbes, Scott Mendelson, which, is questionable. Yeah, but I thought this one was pretty good. 5 reasons Disney should split the next Star Wars movie into 2 movies. There's a fun new rumor floating around the web concerning Disney and Lucasfilm's debate whether to have J.J. Abrams' Star Wars Episode 9 be by far the longest Star Wars movie of all time, or cut the movie in half and release it as Episode 9 and 10. Now, I normally wouldn't comment on a rumor that I don't necessarily believe, but well, I kind of like this one. Whether it's true or not, the notion of splitting the last Star Wars movie into the last 2 Star Wars movies actually makes a certain amount of sense, both in terms of artistic and financial potential. And if you look at the brand as it exists now, it's almost a win-win situation. Without getting into contract negotiations or potentially needing more production time to add more footage to what may now be 2 movies instead of 1, here are a few reasons why. History shows that the whole split one movie into 2 movies works pretty well, says me. I cannot proclaim that Star Wars Episode 9 and Star Wars 10 would, as 2 movies, be better than merely one overlong Star Wars 9. As far as the whole split one movie into 2 thing goes, it's actually a pretty decent track record. I'm the idiot who thinks Warner Brothers Time Warner's Incorporated The Matrix Reloaded is the best movie in the Matrix trilogy. You gotta be kidding me. Matrix Reloaded was horrible. The Matrix is the only Matrix movie that was ever made that was actually any good. And I'm even the moron who thinks Warner Brothers' Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is the best Harry Potter movie. I don't think you're a moron. That was probably one of the best ones in terms of being like the book. Wait, it gets worse. I like the last 2 Hunger Games movies, Mockingjay 1 and Mockingjay 2, more than the first 2. You're an idiot. And bloat notwithstanding, I don't hate Dead Man's Chest or At World's End. Good God, Scott Mendelson, are you you are an idiot. Good Lord. Anyway, in most cases, the extra movie allowed the filmmakers to spend more time on pure character development and character work as opposed to trying to cover as much plot as possible in the allotted running time. Okay, so maybe the last Twilight book didn't need 2 movies, but that didn't make the first and last 30 minutes of Breaking Dawn Part 2 any less enjoyable, and it didn't make the final Gonzo Bananas action climax any less awesome. Yes, Lionsgate's Divergent was a catastrophe, but all 3 of those films were varying degrees of not good, so that it was Divergent and Insurgent's fault that Allegiant crashed and burned, because if folks of Part 1 of 2, they show up for Part 2 of 2. If audience like Part 1, then they will absolutely show up for Part 2 of 2. As noted back when Walt Disney's Avengers Infinity War revealed itself as Part 1 of 2, the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 1 made more than any prior Twilight movie worldwide, $712 million. And about as much, $281 million, as the first 2 sequels, $296 million and $300 million. Harry Potter the Deathly Hallows earned just under $295 million. The last 3 Harry Potter sequels, $290 million in 2005, $292 million in 2007, and $302 million in 2009. It's the 3rd biggest Harry Potter film worldwide. Hunger Games Mockingjay 1 made more worldwide, $755 million, than the first Hunger Games, while Mockingjay Part 2 earned $653 million. Artistic integrity notwithstanding, it would be corporate malfeasance not to break up the final book in a popular young adult franchise into 2 movies if possible. You think Lionsgate would rather have 1 Mockingjay movie that earned $755 million worldwide, or 2 Mockingjay movies that earned $1.4 billion at double the cost? It wasn't the cliffhanger ending that marred the reception to The Matrix Reloaded or Back to the Future Part 2. My pick for the best cliffhanger in modern cinema history. Well, you do have a point there, Scott Mendelson. Breaking Dawn Part 2 topped 812 worldwide. Harry Potter's The Deathly Hallows Part 2 earned $1.3 billion 6 months after Deathly Hallows Part 1. If audience like Part 1, cliffhanger or not, they'll show up for Part 2. If J.J. Abrams' Episode 9 pleases audience and fans in December of 2019, those folks might not mind showing up for Episode 10 in December 2021. Turning a trilogy into a quadrilogy will bring balance to the timeline. Artistically speaking, there's a value in turning the specific three-part saga into a four-part saga. Force Awakens and Last Jedi all take place within about a week. But by all accounts, Episode 9 will be getting a time jump of sorts. That's fine, especially if you think, as I do, that The Last Jedi is essentially a series finale for the Star Wars saga. The Last Jedi is the climax of the whole 9-film Skywalker solo saga, while Episode 9 is the epilogue. But cutting Episode 9 into 2 movies would also allows you to essentially have a 4-part saga where the first half takes place in one specific moment in time, and while the second half, not just the third, takes place in another moment in time. It would avoid paragon to digression, the minor annoyance of Matrix taking place in one time and then Matrix Reload and Mechanism Revolutions taking place 6 months later in a single 72-hour period. Ditto, Pirates of the Caribbean, which had 1 standalone original and then 2 takes place months or years later sequels that unspooled within a very brief amount of time. It wasn't just a personal and very minor pet peeve of mine. Come what may, I like that the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies all take place around 10 years after each other, which makes them feel, even with the missing cast members in the lesser third flick, like 3 key chapters in Rick's adult life. But that's just my nitpicking thing. I would buy Lucasfilm time to map out the post-Skywalker solo Star Wars saga while offering a Star Wars or Avatar movie every Christmas. The real financial reason to potentially split the movies into 2 parts is that it buys Disney some extra time to figure out what to do with the Star Wars brand once the Skywalker solo saga comes to an apparent end. We know that under 400 million worldwide box office for Solo, a Star Wars story, which, it should be noted, received decent reviews and was mostly enjoyable by the people who showed up, has left Disney understandably skittish about the Star Wars story spin-offs. We also know that how serious Lucasfilm is about already announced, in theory, standalone trilogies from Rian Johnson and the Game of Thrones guys, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. So going this route puts that decision off until December of 2023. That's because, as noted last week, Disney purchase Fox now gets them James Cameron's 4 Avatar sequels. As I noted at the time, it would be all too easy for Disney to play release date, musical chairs, and slot a Star Wars movie for December 2019, 2021, 2023, and 2025. Meanwhile, they could slot Avatar sequels in December of 2020, 2022, 2024, and 2026. That would put less pressure on the Star Wars franchise to be the mother of all blockbuster IP. And splitting Star Wars 9 into 2 movies and scheduling them 2 years apart would buy them lots of time to workshop and develop whatever is going to come next in the post-Skywalker solo Star Wars movie universe. At this juncture, they have nothing to lose. Disney has nothing to lose. At the very least, going this route would give Disney 2 Star Wars movies that earn under 1.1 billion worldwide, while each instead of the Star Wars movie that earns around 1.3 to 1.6 billion worldwide. That's if the backlash from Last Jedi doesn't stop them from making that money. I doubt Episode 9 is going to be a financial success. Unless Star Wars 9 is terrible to the point where it sours interest in Episode 10, general audiences will show up for the last 2 Star Wars movies in cumulative graded numbers than they would have for a single finale. That is your opinion. It is not true. Star Wars right now is in one of the worst places that it's ever been because of The Last Jedi and because of Rian Johnson. Scott Mendelson is a Lucasfilm whore. Hardcore fans would complain about it, industry analysts would dissect it, and bloggers would decry it, but history has shown that splitting a long chapter into 2 chapters means more money. As John Hurt says in Contact, why have 1 when you can have 2 for twice the price? Moreover, if this doesn't work out and the last 2 films aren't good, then quite frankly, Disney is no more of a dead end than they would be with one good, if or not so good, Star Wars episode in terms of figuring out where to go next. Whether or not it will be artistically rewarding as Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Kill Bill, or Avengers 3 and 4, there is actually very little downside to going this route, at least in terms of box office precedent. Splitting the final into 2 parts presumably gets you twice the grosses for twice the budget while buying time to figure out what comes next and more easily creating an odd, even annual Christmas schedule with Avatar. It actually makes sense. Scott Mendelson, you just are a Lucasfilm whore. Oh my God. I don't know about them splitting it in. That's if it actually does well at all, which I don't think it's going to. I think that there's a backlash to The Last Jedi that's going to carry over into Episode 9. And right now, as it stands, I don't care what happens. You know, am I going to go see the movie? Yeah, probably, but that's because I'm a huge Star Wars fan and because I'm morbidly curious as to how they're going to just completely kill the franchise. Well, that's just me talking. Anyway, I'd like to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, and have a great day.